The economist Adam Smith said that an invisible hand guides the market when we are individuals who are rational, who seek to maximize our happiness, and therefore we compete with others to gain scarce resources. 200 years later, UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher famously picked up that idea and said that there is no such thing as society, there is only individuals and families. And so she set up, and what has become really the economic orthodoxy of the last 40 plus years, the idea of competition, that we are individuals who compete with others within society. And today we compete academically for places at selective schools and universities. We compete with other applicants for jobs. We compete with other renters and bidders to get a place to live. And so competition and individualism permeates our lives in so many ways, even unconsciously. And while that may be economically efficient, it has the negative result of making us competitive in so much of our lives, competitive rather than cooperative. It isolates us as individuals and makes us more and more tired and stressed. This is clearly not God's vision for how we should live. And so the alternative is that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. We see ourselves not as isolated individuals, not competitors, but collaborators in a wider society or community. So belonging to any kind of community is a good thing, whether that's a small sports club or a school classroom or some other social group. Belonging is a good thing. But there is something bigger we are all invited to belong to too, something far more substantial than our sporting club or our temporary membership of a class, and that is the church. That we belong to the Catholic Church, which has a unique status, which is something we see today in the Gospel, which we've just read. So let's look at it together. The Gospel begins with Jesus taking a survey of what people think about him, and we know the answers. People say various things about Jesus being a prophet or John the Baptist. But Jesus then asked the disciples personally, who do you say I am? Now, have you ever had a moment where you just blurted something out and you thought, where did that come from? But turned out to be the right answer, a good answer? That happened for Peter, who blurted out, I believe you are the Christ, the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. And Jesus goes, yep, Peter, right answer. And Jesus' response is really interesting. He says, Simon, son of John, you are a happy man because flesh and blood could not reveal this to you. It was my Father in heaven who revealed this, meaning you could not have worked this out on your own. This is not just logic. This is supernatural. This is revelation. God showing you, God teaching you something new here. So while the Jewish people were waiting for a Messiah to come, and maybe they could have worked out from Jesus' words and actions that he was the Messiah, the Christ, no one could have worked out that Jesus was the Son of God. Son of God was just not a category which existed for Jewish people who believed there was only one God. It's like for someone today saying that somebody is God's twin sister, not a category that exists. So this was something completely new that clearly God revealed to Peter's heart perhaps in that very moment. And because of that, Jesus then Jesus affirms Peter for his faith and his understanding, but then takes him a step further and says, Peter, you are the rock on which I will build my church. And what Jesus is doing here is saying, Peter, because you understand the supernatural, because you are open to being taught by God, your faith is supernatural. And you are now the right person which I can build a church, which itself will be supernatural. Now, the church we have today, it looks very different to the early church. But we believe in faith that this is the same church that Jesus intended, that Jesus in that time intended to build. And the very idea of church would have been very misunderstood, I think, at the time Jesus said it. Only years later, in reflection, as the church began, as the Gospels were written down, might they have realized exactly what Jesus was talking about. But Jesus is making the point here that the church he intends, which we are now part of, is something which is supernatural, just as faith and understanding is also supernatural. Our church is not just a human organization. We don't just happen to belong because, we live in the same place and we come together. This is something God intends for us to be a part of. Jesus digs deep in this moment. He says, Peter, This church, I will give you the keys of the kingdom, and the gates of hell will not hold out against it. Meaning there's something strong here. There's, in the spiritual realm, the church has a place. Again, it's not just human, it's spiritual. And that Jesus says that whatever you bind on earth should be considered bound in heaven. And so he's saying the things the church does on earth actually are significant. They are more than just a democracy choosing what is right for this moment. It is the church doing something which is bigger, and that's why we take ourselves as a church seriously. We take what we teach and believe seriously, because God intends it to be so. So this is something for us to take great joy in, our membership in this church, that we are part of something big, part of something with 1 billion people on earth, but it's more than just us here on earth. It is God working in and through the church by the power of the Spirit and the presence of Jesus. It means that our sacraments are real connections for us to God in heaven. And notice, just say one last thing, notice in the Eucharistic prayer, which we'll pray at every Mass, we pray for ourselves here and now, and we pray for those who we're praying in the room with. But then we always make reference to our bishop, and that for us in Broken Bay is Bishop Anthony Randazzo. And by praying for our bishop, we connect ourselves to the whole rest of the diocese, to everyone in our neighbouring churches. And then we always make reference to our Pope. Right now there's Pope Francis. And so by doing that, we connect ourselves to the entire church throughout the world. We are connected spiritually to something much bigger than ourselves. But wait, there's more than that. We then say we pray for those who have died before us. And we pray for those saints who are already in heaven and those who are awaiting heaven in some way. So we connect ourselves to everyone who is a part of the church, but everyone who has ever been part of the church in the past. And our commitment is that we commit ourselves to build a church for the future as well, that we are on the mission of evangelization. So we are part of a church which has spiritual roots and a spiritual continuation even today. We say in the Creed, we believe in one holy, Catholic and apostolic church, connecting back to the apostles. It's holy not because we're perfect, but because God is at work in us and through us. We are much more than isolated individuals. We are much more than competitors with others in society. We are citizens of a kingdom beyond earth, citizens of the kingdom of heaven, of which the church is the forerunner and the herald.